So, let's begin.
My name is Tivon Rivers. I'm a targeted individual and an electronic harassment and gangstalking survivor, and this is my testimony.
So let's start with your background. Tell us a little bit about how you grew up and the kind of work that you did, where you lived.
Well, my background, I'm from the Washington, Northern Virginia, North Carolina area. My family is originally from North Carolina. I was born and raised in a military family. My dad was a Navy submariner. He was also an electronics technician. And basically, the East Coast is where I was born and raised. I spent some time in university. Eventually ended up going into the Navy as a cryptologic technician, which involves electronics training and the sort of thing needed to repair most electromechanical items. So I had a career in the Navy, 6 years in the Navy. Enjoyed those 6 years. And in the end, my last my last station was in RAF Menwith Hill in North Yorkshire in England. And it was there that I married my ex, and we both decided to leave the defense community in 2006. And I lived there in the UK for about 12 years. I was originally stationed there in 2004.
Before we go into the UK and what happened there, I just wanted to know if you can give a little bit about the type of work that you were doing while you were in the Navy, as much as you can, as much as you can say, because there's things you're not supposed to talk about, and we'll respect that. But the type of work you were doing and the types of agencies that were around you, so that you, just to give people an idea that you were part of these circles in some way.
Yes. So this is as a reference. I was a cryptologic technician, and I performed network installation and repair of equipment for installations. So we flew around and repaired equipment. And the things we talk about with regard to electronic harassment later in the interview has nothing to do with anything that I worked on. That although I did have a top secret clearance and I was read into certain programs, they have in no way have anything to do with the things I've experienced since I left the Navy over 12 years ago. And if anyone who's familiar with that kind of community knows that top secret clearances are given out like candy, and doesn't mean that you know anything about any of the programs that are going on parallel to what you're working on. So while I was in the Navy, that was pretty much my duty. I repaired electromechanical equipment, network equipment primarily, and I flew around, and that was primarily my job.
So you were installing all of the equipment for other different projects all over the place to make sure that the communication systems were set up. That's part of the equipment installation and all of that. And also just wanted to mention that in the military there is compartmentalization.
Yes.
So there are many different levels in the military, and most of them are on a need-to-know basis. So I think that giving out top secret clearance like candy is a good way of putting it, because that doesn't mean that you really know anything. You're just doing your job, and you're doing the best that you can do, and you don't know about things that are going on in levels above you.
Or beside you. I work next to contractors.
Okay.
Contractors you work with on some of these projects. But to answer your question with regard to some of the agencies that were using the equipment that we're installing, it did include intelligence agencies as well.
Okay. And so I just wanted to ask about between, being an American and then deciding to move and relocate to the UK. Could you just tell us some of your reasons behind wanting to leave America back then?
At the time, I enjoyed my time in the Navy personally, as a personal career, especially the friends and the things I learned there. But I had a problem with the direction of politics as far as the war footing. And so I made a conscious decision to leave the military after my 6 years. But I also enjoyed seeing the rest of the world. And at the time, the rest of the world for me was England. I enjoyed the UK. And I thought that what I would try to do is do something away from the military world, the defense world, and go into something more open and free, like art. So I wanted to try to open up a contracting business where I did websites and graphic design, oil painting, doing commissions for things like that. It was also the time when I met my ex, who was also in the defense community, where we both decided, she was British, decided to leave the military world and just go out in the private sector and just break away from that.
So now this is where it gets into some interesting things here, because you lived in the UK for about 9 years.
Yeah.
9 years,
yeah.
And you were working different IT jobs. Yes. While you were there. And yeah. In the beginning, when you met your ex-wife, the two of you left the services together. She was working at a job that you were working at, and that's how you met.
Yes.
And you both decided to leave that particular world and go on to different careers, right?
Yes,
different paths. And the reason I bring that up is because you've spoken about how maybe looking back in hindsight, that was the problem.
Yeah.
The fact that you had left that world of, describe that time.
Well, when I left the Navy while stationed in North Yorkshire, I remember my chain of command. In one sense, they respected my decision to do so, but they encouraged me to go back to the States. And I've always been free-willed. If there's something I'd like to try and explore, I just do it. And so I had mixed reactions from people who were within my chain of command. Some of my colleagues, they didn't understand why I left, but to be honest, anyone who hasn't looked at what's been happening since September 11th, it can be very difficult if you're in the services. And for me, my family, my uncles, they all, I'm like third generation military, so you're told certain stories about how the country runs or how things should run, how things should operate. So when you see certain things happen in your career, you have questions. And it's not from the perspective of someone who doesn't know, but more like from what you've been told from your parents who were military, how things should work.
Would you be willing to share that perspective in this interview about your feelings about what you saw around September 11th and what kind of started your questioning process?
Yes. I mean, my problem, the questions I've had has always been, things like the Twin Towers being hit by a plane, the air defenses being down that day.
Yeah, where was all the air defense? Because normally, your father, who was in the military, told you that there's always going to be some kind, like a plane would never make it in that far without getting shot down.
And definitely an object hitting the Pentagon that shouldn't happen either.
Right.
And where are some of the things that people should look at where are the testimonials of veterans talking about the air defenses on that day? But I remember from a young age, 8 years old, my father at the time had left the Navy. He was working as a contractor in Washington, D.C., and even at that age, and this is still the Cold War, or the end of the Cold War, where he's telling me, if the Russians ever launch missiles at Washington, D.C., there's a whole battery of anti-aircraft weaponry that the United States has. And this is the type of upbringing I was raised in. And he told me things he probably shouldn't have told me, but I think in reality, I think a lot of military families are told these things so that they know, especially if the children are probably going to end up being in the military themselves. So there's a whole other layer. There's a whole other layer of reality for those who serve in the military, generations in the military and the services. So where I was, the team I was working with, we were literally a few blocks away from the Pentagon when it got hit on September 11th. And a lot of us were asking all kinds of questions in the parking lot because we all had to evacuate from the buildings we were working in. So that's always been in the back of my mind. I remember after September 11th, I couldn't sleep for 3 days. I was always in the gym working out, trying to get my head around how is this even possible. So for me, September 11th always keeps coming back to me.
You know, lately we've been hearing that was the day the world changed, and even in some like Native American tribal circles, they call it the time of the beginning of the Great Tribulation.
Interesting.
So I definitely think that the world has been a very different place since September 11th, and it affected so many different people in so many different ways. So thanks for sharing that with us, because that's a unique perspective. Let's move forward to being in the UK, and let's talk a little bit about Menwith Hill.
Okay.
And because you discovered something at Menwith Hill just recently that you did not know while you were actually stationed there. So let's talk about you being stationed there, roughly what you were doing there, and what you've discovered about Menwith Hill recently.
Well, in the past couple of months, well, it's longer than that, since I've been electronically targeted in 2014, I've been trying to find different ways of to remedy the symptoms I've been suffering from this targeting. A lot of the targeting is directed energy. It's meant to induce pain, keep you up at night, and a lot of other things like insomnia and so forth. So when you're doing your research, if you are someone who's a targeted individual, you know, you want to find out what this is, how is the energy delivered, who's responsible for all of this, and as you do your research, you start coming across certain agencies that keep popping up and testimonials by other people who claim to be electronic harassment victims, who've actually filed court cases in the United States or in the Five Eyes in the UK. So I came across some documents by someone who was filing a court case in Britain. And basically what they alleged is that they were an electronic harassment victim, and that they claimed that the electronic harassment was coming from a team out of Menwith Hill. And they presented in this, this documentation is available online, it was public domain, but this was basically a file that they filed to one of the courts in England to basically put a stop to this harassment. And when I saw this document, I was basically floored, because for me it was like there was a loop that was coming full circle. You know, here I am back in 2004 to 2006 stationed in Menwith Hill, and for me a day would be like I'm doing my work on the base, getting out of work, I'm stationed off base, and you know, I work out, and you know, I have a life. And when I drive in the next morning in the base, I see a lot of people protesting. A lot of these were British locals protesting the base being there. And we're trained to just ignore them and just drive on into the base and do your job.
Wow.
You know, and these people have signs and all kinds of stuff. I didn't tend not to read the signs. I'm just, you know, doing my job. Do
you remember what any of the signs said at all?
A lot of it is just, you know, the base shouldn't be here. This is British soil. You know, Americans get off the base.
Wow.
Type of thing. So, you know, but I'm thinking, well, it's just because people don't appreciate the base being there. And at the time I'm thinking, you know, defending the freedoms from terrorism, because, you know, with those radomes, anyone who looks up the base online will see that it's a surveillance type of platform. But someone like me, I was thinking, well, it's to, you know, intercept communications from terrorists, you know. And here I am in 2017, and I find this document by someone who claims that, no, this is a platform that's used to electronically torture people.
Now, we're gonna go in depth to what these devices are, what they do. We've done so much together, talking about electronic harassment, showing the patents for all of the different weapons that are out there that are being used on citizens, and there is so much documentation and proof. But this is a really interesting part of your story. I can see that you're getting emotional because it's tough to look back in hindsight and realize that you saw the weapons that were being used that would eventually be turned on you.
Yes.
So, and I've had moments like that too. So I'm sure people can understand that when you look back in your memory and you realize that you saw something and you didn't understand what it was at the time, but now that you look back, you see what it is, and it's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow that such diabolical evil can exist and does exist. But that's why we're putting this testimony out there for you and for others that are listening.
Yes.
So let's move forward a little bit. So you left Menwith Hill, and by the way, we're going to put a link to the documentation about that lawsuit. So anybody listening to this can go in the description, in the video, or on the blog, and try to find that link so that you can look up the actual court case yourself, so you can see that portion of the story.
Yeah.
So let's move on to when you first remember your electronic harassment beginning and the gangstalking beginning. And I want to start with the art fair that you were at. Now, you are an artist, an amazing artist, and we can put some pictures of your work up on this testimony so you can see that the level of skill that Tivon has as an oil painter is really, it's unbelievable. And you spent a lot of time, you went to school for that, and so it's a real talent that you have. You were painting at an art fair, an open area art fair in the UK. Do you want to mention what area of the UK it was in?
It was in Cirencester.
In Cirencester. And so you were painting, and something happened while you were at this open public event that you have remembered ever since that day, and you think that perhaps this might have been the beginning.
Yes. Yeah. So, to give a bit of background, also during this time, I just recently moved into an apartment complex, having been there for several months, and I was in the middle of a separation. So I was trying to kind of get back on my feet and try to start doing things that I really enjoyed, which was the oil painting. So there are several weeks when in Cirencester, the town hall there, they have public exhibitions from local crafts and things, and I thought I could just do some public painting during the week. And this one particular day, I was painting, and I had this easel, and I'm literally just out there doing a large painting, and you're surrounded by people all around you, just people coming in and out. And this one particular thing that stands out with me is that when I was working on this small detail, I was surrounded by several groups of people, and I felt three sharp of pulses in the back of my neck. And it was strange because it wasn't like a cramp. It was like, it's hard to describe it. I almost felt like my neck was seizing up and that I was about to pass out, and I had to adjust myself. And that stood out for me because that was very unusual. I'm used to painting in public venues, and I know what being exhausted and cramping and readjusting feels like, and that sort of thing. This was something different, and so that stood out for me. And within the week of that event or incident, the electronic targeting started. The heavy electronic targeting started a week after that.
So let's describe what that is to people that don't know about this? Because most people don't understand what electronic harassment is, and they just don't have any idea.
Yeah.
But then there are many people that are being targeted. More and more people are being targeted, and they're coming out on YouTube videos and testimonies. So there's a community that's growing of people that are victims of this, that are finding each other and trying to help each other.
Yeah.
So we just wanted to add this testimony to that community, so that people can benefit from this. So let's describe because there's two components to this. There's gangstalking, and then there's electronic harassment. So first, let's cover the electronic harassment.
Okay.
What did you experience? What is it?
Well, the symptoms are very broad. So the thing about this program is when you start to describe what they are, it comes off kind of disjointed. But when you analyze what the main theme of the program is, it kind of puts things in perspective. So the whole purpose of the electronic harassment program is to have a bunch of small little things happen to you in such a way that you don't know what's going on. You can't delineate what's happening. But basically, what it is for me, it started off by experiencing pain and inflammation and extreme nightmares. That's the way it started for me. And now the thing is that during this time, I was really trying to keep myself healthy and detoxing. I was drinking bicarb every day. I was jogging like 5 miles 3 days a week. So at the time, I thought I was finely tuned. I know that if something was to happen to me externally, I would know it, because it was like so far from the norm.
Okay.
And so the way it started off for me was that I would wake up in a cold sweat. I'd go into the bathroom, look at myself in the mirror, and my face would be red flush, my eyes would be beet red, or I'd have like an inflammation on my legs or on my limbs. And with no explanation, just what is this? And this would continue over a period of time. And now this happened all in a week period. It would progress from there to, in the evenings, before I'd go to bed, I would get jolts in my back, along my spine, right before I'm about to go into REM sleep. And it's like I couldn't go to sleep. It was like a constant jolt or pain, so that you can't sleep. And so now you have inflammation, you have jolts that keep you awake at night. It just seems to be progressively worse. So you're tired during the day, during your working hours, so you don't perform during work like you should. And
just to clarify a little bit, looking now that you've learned what you've learned, these symptoms, you believe, were caused by electronic microwave weapons.
Yes, that's right.
That they can be beamed into a person from things like satellites, relaying off of things like cell phone towers, satellite dishes on rooftops, things along those lines. They can use those as a network to beam an electronic microwave into a person's body.
Yes.
And so you feel that this is what you were experiencing.
In summary, yes, and it's taken literally 2 years of research to come to that conclusion, based on my background as a technician and reading other people's testimonials and other people who are victims but also happen to be engineers. That's the conclusion. But at the time, back in 2014, it's the shock and awe of this weapons platform. When you're hit with it, you're trying to figure out what the heck is going on with me.
Also, the 3 jabs that you felt in the back of your neck while you were in the art fair, you feel that those are, that was when they placed maybe some sort of an implant into you to create, or they created a signal into your body, so that's when they tagged you to become a target.
I now, in hindsight, I now believe what that was is some kind of signaling system.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it requires anyone to physically implant you with anything, and I think this goes into other things about how everyone at some degree is trackable because of what's in the environment. But I think what that was a signal capture system where a group of people beam a signal at your body, and that signal's picked up by a remote location. And once that's acquired, you're on the network 24/7. I think that's what that was. When you're plugged into the system, I think that's what you feel, sensations in your body. That's kind of like the capture. That's like the capture. A set of frequencies hit your body. The response you feel, in my case, was pains in the back of the neck, because I think this system has something to do with tracking your nervous system. And that goes into other things and how that's possible. And I think once those set of frequencies are captured and it's identified as you, the target, then you can just assign a number to that on a database somewhere, and there you are. You're tracked 24/7. So that's why I believe what happened there. But as far as the progressing from that incident to what happened over the course of a week, towards the end of that week, I was literally experiencing what would some people call v2K, or voice to skull, basically signals hitting my brain, and it comes off as auditory signals. So
all right, let's talk about the v2K.
Okay.
So let's open that up. And
yeah.
First, v2K stands for Voice to Skull Technology.
Voice to Skull Technology. Yeah.
It's also been called the Voice of God.
Yes.
Technology.
Yeah.
And roughly what it is it's the ability to take a sound and beam it through microwaves or frequencies into someone's head, into someone's skull, so that only that person can hear it.
Yeah.
And this is a very real technology that's been thoroughly documented. We've done a lot of work explaining it, showing videos and examples to document it and back this up. So it's a real technology that is actually being used by covert operations, for lack of a better term for it. And it's being used on citizens of many different countries. Specifically, the ones where it's really prevalent is the Five Eyes countries, which would be America, the UK, New Zealand, Australia, and Canada.
Yeah.
These are the places where it happens the most, but there's a lot of it going on in European countries as well that we've been finding. So now that we've defined what voice v2K is, can you describe your experience with it?
So these signals, when it hits the skull, the apparition are voices. And these voices have intelligence to them. You know what the voices are saying to you. So someone's on the other end, either as an operator or through a computer algorithm, speaking a string of sentences that only you, the target, can hear.
What kinds of things do they say?
For lack of a better word, quite frankly, demonic. But these are things like you are and I think, by the way, these scripts vary. They vary from person to person. I believe these scripts are to destroy the person on all levels so that they have a mental breakdown. But because of, I'll just tell you what the intelligence is of the signals. That's what they call the actual string of sentences. So that if anyone's a veteran out there and they've experienced the same thing, or they've used to work in the contractor community and they're now v2K and they're afraid to talk about it, I don't mind talking about it now, because I think some of these scripts are being used on certain sets of people who, quite frankly, are morally upright, are very patriotic of their country, but they don't like corruption.
Yeah.
So for me, the intelligence would be the following sentences. You're a spy. You're a Russian spy, which is ridiculous, but you're a Russian spy. You hate Israel. You know, I think that's an interesting one. You are a traitor. someone needs to kill you and take you out. Or sometimes they'll say in the third person, someone needs to take this person out. I think a lot of people who are experiencing v2K, by the way, are threatened regularly with their lives about each day they're going to be dead.
Yeah.
Or they're going to die in their sleep. Sometimes the operators brag about how they love doing this kind of work. Mm-hmm. They brag about how many people they've murdered this way. The operators assume the role of agents of the CIA or of the UN or of what would be considered a large organization. And I believe a lot of that is a demoralization tactic so that the individual, the target, feels like there's nothing they can do to fight against this. It's as if this platform, which I pretty much have concluded is decentralized and has to be a multi-billion-dollar military-based platform, has opened a pipe for various people from various organizations to use for their own different purposes. So for all I know, these operators could be a bunch of delusional psychopaths working for a contractor. The intelligence of the signal can arrive, because it's satellite-based and ground-based, can be thousands of miles away. So although the voice might, and this is again, and also this kind of dismisses the whole idea that it's multiple personality disorder that the person is suffering from. You know, I'm an American, and although the accents from the signals are British in nature.
That's interesting.
Right. Still, the people who are sending those signals can be in another country that is in no way associated with England. But I think, especially if you're targeted, you need to think along those lines, that a lot of these signals are meant to induce a response, mm-hmm. to make you think it's someone within the relationship that you had. Because before you even get in this program, I think I was put under surveillance ever since I left the military and I stayed in Britain. So I think at some degree, MI5, MI6 are involved with putting me on someone's blacklist. However, the person who's doing this, or the group, or the team that's doing the actual harassment, could be in another country for all I know. I think this is very important. People must not, who are targets, must not fall into the trap of it's your neighbor who's doing this. It may or may not be. And indeed, the system, if you listen to the reports and the testimonies of people like Karen Stewart, who is an ex-NSA employee, who also has been put on this program, she's concluded that a lot of these perpetrators or operators tend to be from the contractor community. And if you are ex-military and you work next to contractors, anyone who's in that community knows that contractors can be given top secret clearances and not have worked in the forces.
I want to talk about the timing of this, because you had mentioned that you were going through a separation from your ex-wife at the time.
Yes. When
this activity, we'll call it,
yeah,
because there's more to it, there's gangstalking as well.
That's right.
Began. So at that time, it was, so you were being separated. So that's a very difficult, vulnerable time for a person. And I wanted to kind of just highlight that a little bit, because this seems to be a pattern that this program begins targeting people,
yes,
during vulnerable moments in their life, when they're getting divorced,
yes,
when there's a death in the family.
Mm-hmm.
What have you seen along those lines, and do you think that that's what was going on with you?
In 2014, when the harassment started in that apartment complex, which now I believe that complex, for me, that apartment was rigged for harassment. Mm. And it probably is not the only one. I experienced actual on-the-ground surveillance by people and building contractors around the place I stayed at.
Which, yeah, we're going to get into that when it comes to the gang stalking as well.
So I ended up leaving that place. But for me, I was going through a separation, but it was also a period of time when I had a relationship with someone for a brief period of time who were friends of ours at the time. And I was dating this person. And there are some strange occurrences around that whole relationship that, for me, I felt very uncomfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at some level, that interaction also contributed to the targeting. It was what makes this thing complicated is it's as if once you're under surveillance, and it's for a period of years, any groups of people that you're interacting with, especially if it's local within an area, and they have their control grid there with intelligence agents and whatnot, a narrative is created about you, and these people go into your life, go into your friends, go to your neighbors, to start spreading crazy rumors about you, meant to destroy your credibility, your character. It's like, think of the Ten Commandments and everything that is negated. You know, it's the bearing of the false witness, and on and on and on. So I feel that also contributed to this electronic targeting, but in general, I had that on top of the separation. And so when this happened, the electronic targeting, I tried to tell my spouse that I was separating from at the time. And, you know, she obviously concerned. The biggest response people get who are targeted, they get a response saying, we're, you know, concerned about you being overstressed, or maybe you need to see a psychiatrist, you know, maybe you need to get on medication. Or seek counseling.
Yeah.
And at the time, I'm being electronically targeted in my apartment and by myself. So I packed my things and I went to this other place.
Well, before you go into that part, let's talk about gangstalking and that particular element, because it relates to being in that apartment complex.
Yeah. So
can you try your best to define what gangstalking is?
In brief, gangstalking, based on me trying to research this phenomenon, is basically COINTELPRO that was done in the 50s and 60s, but with this overlay of electronic surveillance.
And what would COINTELPRO be?
So COINTELPRO during the time in America was this operation against a movement. It was a general awakening that was happening during the civil rights movement. That was one form of awakening, civil rights, and other equal rights, and people were protesting, and there was a social reform that was organically occurring in the United States from the 1960s up to 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
Now, during that time, that was a problem for the establishment and the FBI, the FBI was basically heading this project to go into the movements and subvert them from the inside.
What kind of things would they do to subvert the movements?
So agents would go in, maybe being as members.
Pretending to be
members, you know, really for the cause.
So they're like double agents, right?
Yeah. So this is espionage.
Yeah.
So I had to read on this, I had to research this, and they'd go in, so it's either going in as members or things like frame-ups. Leaders of some of these movements, civil rights movements, would you know, like drugs or a bomb or something be planted in their home, their apartment, you know, or in their car, and then they'd be labeled as some kind of terrorist or criminal. You know, people have died over this during that time. But basically, the gangstalking we were talking about is espionage. We're talking about human intelligence done against the population, the local population.
So, to just unpack that a little more, what you've seen and found, because we've been researching this together, actually, is that the people that are being employed, and I do mean employed, to do gangstalking activities against other citizens of the country. Not all of them, but many of them are kind of like the dropouts of society. A lot of them are living on the dole, as they might say. People that are, you know, living off of welfare checks. who don't have jobs. They don't go to a job, and we know it's getting, there's more and more recruits,
Yes.
because there's more and more people that are running out of work because there's
Yes.
no work anymore. So
That's
you have
right.
more people that are unemployed,
Yes,
that they'll do anything just to make a little bit of money.
that's right.
And then you've got these like shadow government kind of organizations, many of which are related to things like Soros,
Yeah.
right? Because,
Yeah.
I mean, who funds these things?
Yeah, who funds them?
Well, we just saw that Soros was funding a whole bunch of social disruption activities through all
Yeah.
these different organizations. So what the people that are doing this are citizens that live in neighborhoods
Yes,
that don't have jobs, and
Yeah.
that they stay home all day, and
Yeah.
somehow they're getting some kind of payment.
yes,
We have some theories as to how that payment happens. We don't think that it's a lot of money, but when you're totally broke, something is better than nothing.
yeah,
So they could be your neighbor living next door to you.
yes,
They could be the kid sitting on the bike, the kid meaning a teenager,
Yes.
sitting on his bike on the corner, just staring at you all day.
yeah, that's it.
There's stories of mail trucks
Yeah.
coming,
Yeah.
where these mail trucks would just drive down the street, and it would be like one mail truck after another after another.
Yeah,
And they would do strange things around one particular targeted individual
yeah,
to make them feel like they were crazy.
Yeah.
Like, why is it that every time I try to drive anywhere, I'm being obstructed by a mail truck
Yeah.
all the time,
yeah.
day in and day out? So there's all kinds of weird tactics
Yes, that's it.
that we have seen and heard about in these gang stalking programs. So they're kind of like evil, gaslighting community watch
A
programs.
lot of it is founded in Community Watch.
Right? Community watch situations, so you don't feel like you're safe in your home. And they'll do things. So one thing that we've seen, you can talk about this, is when they walk outside of your house, people walk outside of your house, and
Yes.
they will shout things
Yes, that's
so
it.
that you can hear them.
Yes,
And in some cases, the things that they were shouting, verbally, a person on the street was shouting it, was the same thing that you were hearing in your head
yes,
with the v2K technology.
That's it.
So you see how it links up.
yes.
Talk about those experiences. You had one with a trash can being kicked down the street.
Yes, that's it.
What happened there?
So the whole point of the Human Intelligence Campaign is to have people out on the street to say something that only is in context to what the target individual is saying. So anyone else who is not part of the program, who's a neighbor, maybe 3 or 4 houses down, would hear someone shouting something. They're like, oh, it's just a crazy person outside. But the targeted person, who's the neighbor next door, it means a lot to them because they know it's part of an operation.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the rub. This is where neighborhoods start to break down. So
What happened on the? You woke up.
yeah, so I woke up like at 3 in the morning
Mhm.
to someone crashing the trash can in the old apartment that I ended up leaving from,
Mhm.
saying, oh, Tivon, motherfucker, kicking the trash can down the road,
Mhm.
like angry. Now I'm up on the 5th floor. There's no time to react. You can't do anything about that. Someone's downstairs who's a lunatic,
Screaming your name
screaming your name.
in the middle of the night and kicking a trash can to make sure that you wake up and hear that.
Yes.
And
And this is the tactic because they know the response time. There's no way you can find the person by the time you decide to go down 5 flights of steps.
mhm.
Or you can't look out your window because your visibility is limited to what's below you because it's straight down.
Right.
So you can't react.
There was another. You moved into a different apartment,
Yes.
a
yes.
different place after leaving there, and it happened again.
Yes.
Where and I've been to this particular apartment that you're
Yes.
talking about, so I know the area. I can
Yeah.
describe it. It was lots of lawns, not a lot of neighbors.
Yes.
Right.
No, normally, yeah. There's not a lot of neighbors, and most of the neighbors are pensioners.
Right.
Yeah. Older
This was-
people.
This was in England, so it was like not the kind of place that you would see a whole bunch of people walking around in public saying all kinds of stuff, and all of a
Yes.
sudden, it was like, practically deserted area. There wasn't
Normally.
anybody out on
Normally.
the sidewalk, and then, so what, you heard somebody walk by and say something.
Well, yes. I mean, it's the similar situation. You get a lot of activity. At the time, the job I was working at, I was allowed to work from home, so I could complete a lot of the calls from home and things like that. So I was at my home most of the time, doing my work, and so you can see activity outside. You're like, well, this is unusual, and it's I mean, it's things that would seem kind of normal, but then again, it's not really normal. Like a fire truck out the front, 45 minutes, 3 days out of the week, no fire.
Yeah.
People out, someone that was going to cut the lawn next door, talking to a neighbor about you on the property next door. I mean, you hear your name audibly, and you hear these things, and then you have that situation going on, but then you also have the v2K, which is happening, and this is where your perception of reality starts to become blurred with the technology that's being used in electronic torture. This is why it's very difficult unless you start filming and recording and having your own surveillance. You have to have basically a counterintelligence setup to start battling at least the human intelligence aspect of this.
Yeah.
Because there is a real on-the-ground sectioning of people in the community.
That's very well funded.
And it's done through Community Watch. And the biggest thing, that you heard of the I'm just paraphrasing the common slogan about evil thrives when good men do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
In this operation, local law enforcement has to stand down. The local community, at least on the medical level, have to be convinced that, well, electronic harassment does not exist. So if you start complaining and saying this is happening to me, you're written off as someone who needs counseling. And basically, all the rungs of society have to go completely vertical, and no one has to do anything to address the problem that you're having.
Let's talk about how this gangstalking activity also goes into the workplace. So it's not just the community and your neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
There is, we've learned that there is let's call it a secret file that has your name on it.
Yes.
And you, as an individual, and that file contains all kinds of personal information about you.
Yes, that's right.
Data that's collected from everywhere.
That's right.
Right? Including all the social media stuff and people's opinions and whatever. It's a file that's created about you. But you don't ever get to see this file, and you don't even know that it exists.
Yes, that's right.
And inside that file, there's, you were talking about scripts. And you can tell that they're reading from a script because you can hear the certain sentences repeated over and over again in the v2K technology.
Yeah.
But in this case, that file, interestingly, it gets passed around into corporations and areas of employment and business.
Yes.
And you have a very unique story that you can tell about how you were working at one company, and we'll leave the names of the companies out because it doesn't matter. They're all the same, right? Yeah. Big, fancy, well-funded, billion-dollar corporation working in IT, right? Yeah. You were in one company and you were interviewing for a position. Or
yes. Okay. I see,
and then they started saying specific words and sentences to you in that interview, which were a little odd.
Yes.
And then you got another job. Fast forward a couple years later.
Yes.
And you're in a completely new job. They were sent to a new. You were sent to a new company.
Yes, that's it.
To be trained to do something different.
Yeah.
There was like a merge in the company,
yeah.
right? So all of a sudden you're sitting in front of this new board of directors of sorts, and they're like talking to you, and all of a sudden the same flipping sentences came out of their mouths. They were reading from the script from the interview that you were in at a completely different company a couple of years prior, and you realized that it was part of the file. Just talk a little bit about that. What were they saying?
A good Well, an example of what's talked about here was also mentioned by Karen Stewart that I spoke earlier.
Mm-hmm.
She mentioned this in a recent forum that she's on regularly with other people like Dr. Catherine Horton.
Mm-hmm.
So if anyone wants to look that up on YouTube, I think it's called the Pinecone Utopia Forums. It's with Dr. Catherine Horton and Karen Stewart, and some other people are on there. But Karen mentioned how Karen has gone through a lot of the footwork of legally documenting the human intelligence aspect, and how in this particular area of Florida, how she went to the sheriffs with her evidence about the gangstalking on the ground harassment, and how there's basically a case file. And when she went to the sheriff, he actually went to the car, said, hold on 1 minute, went to the car, looked at a stack of folders, saw her name on it, and then didn't want to talk to her. So what's happened is, at least in the United States and in the UK, there is, I guess what you want to call it, a crazy folder.
Yeah.
A black record that no one who's the residents of any of these countries has access to. You try to do a FOIA request, you try to do a Freedom of Information Act, you get blocked. Or you'll get a response like, your file may be in review, but to access this file, pay $2,000. It's meant for it to be inaccessible, because if you're to see this file, you could file a lawsuit.
Right.
On so many levels. At the very least, it's discrimination. Again, myself, people like Karen, we're not charged with anything. We're not formally charged with anything. There have been
there's clean.
No claims, not even a driving ticket.
Yeah, no criminal record at all.
There's no criminal record, but yet you got this surveillance society where every peg of what would be considered a society has been eroded away. So this black record exists, and the way it works is people in the community, some of which probably have no more than a high school education, but they're working for intelligence, or they're working on community watch, and they're paid, perhaps paid by contractors in security services, start spreading rumors about you. It could be on anything. And the thing here is that those very same agencies or contractors have access to your records. If they hack into your internet router, if they hack into your email inbox, if they hack into your Skype, they would have recorded all your conversations. Who you visited on your adult dating site, everything. So what happens is they formulate things that only you would know about, because this is your private information, and then they extrapolate a black record about you. And they go and, I don't know, tell the neighbors anything. But a lot of it is just lies. But it could be anything, and you never know what it is. So so that's the black record. That's the whole point, is to erode your relationship with the community. And if you stand out in the community, and if the neighbors, especially if the neighbors are, and we have to really face this as a group of people. If the neighbors can be influenced by money, which within these tight times is understandable, and they don't know you very much, someone could just flash a badge, say something about you, and to be honest, most people will believe that person flashing the badge. And again, this is meant to not keep you informed that anything that has happened. It's meant to create a situation of mistrust.
Well, I can certainly attest to seeing stuff like that. I'm sure a lot of people, especially in today's job market, if you are an ambitious person that's highly qualified, you've got college degrees and years of experience, and you're a good employee and letters of recommendation and all of that, and you're trying to apply for a job, job after job after job that you are well qualified for, and you interview really well, and you keep getting these strange rejections.
Yes.
And you're starting to think that maybe you're crazy.
Yes, that's right.
It's possible that there is a crazy file.
It's a crazy file, literally.
On you, and as soon as you go in for the interview, the employer receives a copy of that file that says, don't hire this person because they're on a special blacklist and they don't even know it.
That's right.
Personally, I actually feel that that is possible for me as well, because I went through a very intense situation like that, which I won't go into now, but I'm sure a lot of people who are trying to find work and who are getting lots of rejection letters from companies that they're really well qualified for, I don't necessarily think that it's just because the job market is so bad. I think that there's a little more to it.
Yes.
So that was actually one of the deciding moments for you when you went to that. You were at a company,
yes,
and the
right.
company merged, and you had to go to a new employer as part of the company, and you were going to get trained to do a new position.
Yes, okay.
And you had that experience where you realized that they were reading from the crazy file.
Right.
And
so
that was your deciding moment. And this, we're actually getting to the end of the hour here, so we're just going to take a little bit of a break.
Okay.
And when we come back, we're going to talk about your bug out.
Yes.
Okay? Because you fled the gangstalking.
Yeah.
And you escaped it, and we're going to talk about what that was like and all of the different things that you've done to try to combat this and to become a survivor.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're back to our second part of your testimony and the interview that we're doing. And we're going to talk about your bug out, which is what we call it. But essentially, the harassment in all forms got so bad in your life that you had to very quickly and rather unexpectedly leave the country you were living in and basically flee for your life.
Yes, yeah.
You were not planning on it.
No.
You were planning on staying where you were and trying to work things out. So let's start with the sequence of events as they happened, where you were working at a company, the company merged, and you thought you were going to stick around in the UK for at least another year.
Yeah.
What happened after that?
Well, I have to provide a bit of background to what happened in 2000, end of 2008 to 2010.
Okay.
Before the company that I was employed at, I was working at this previous company. It was another IT company. It was out of Abingdon, Oxfordshire. And when I worked at that company, I experienced something similar in the office place that was not only gaslighting, but electronic type of harassment. And I couldn't make sense of it at the time. I raised a formal complaint with the supervisor. There were some other issues going on where I was being moved between two different departments.
Can you just explain what gaslighting is in case someone doesn't know?
Okay, well, gaslighting, it's based on a movie, an old black and white movie. But basically, gaslighting is the act of a person performing doing some actions against another person. And then when that victim, the other person, realizes that's what's happening, the first person will say, "No, that's not it. That's not it. It's in your head.
You're crazy.
You're crazy. You're making it up. That's not what happened.
I didn't actually do that. I didn't say that." Right.
Yeah. So the gaslight is based on a movie where it's a couple and it's an abusive husband that's doing this to a wife, and she ends up going crazy over it. But he's like moving pictures around and all kinds of stuff,
right,
and making her feel like she's crazy. So anyway, this tactic I find later is commonly used to get rid of people in certain organizations, and it was happening to me at this particular IT company by 2010, and by that time I had enough of it and I left. But it was pretty disruptive for me because there was some level of directed energy, electronic harassment stuff happening in the office place where I was sitting at. And there were some other strange events that were happening in that company, around the company. People, fellow employees I was working with complained of when they were walking on the path within that business park, they saw some surveillance cameras and it turned out that that area, there was a company that was testing surveillance equipment. It wasn't telling anyone. So that area, the reason why I bring the area up is because we did a previous show in 2014, which is basically, this is a relaunch of that show. But one of the comments, one of the YouTubers, who also was a foreigner living in the UK, commented on our video that we had to pull for different reasons.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. But.
Yeah, but they mentioned how this is without, they mentioned that they were part of a couple that were living in Abingdon, and her husband worked there, and she was being electronically harassed. So there's a parallel there. That was my first occurrence that I remember of electronic-based harassment, but that was within the workplace. It didn't follow me to my home. And this is why I was able to conclude that this program for me was much longer than what happened in 2014, that this was an ongoing program, and it seems as though people may or may not be on this surveillance grid, not knowing unwittingly on it, but when they do certain actions, it flags, and once it flags, then it can be escalated to something else. So that's why some people who claim to be targeted individuals are maybe experiencing gangstalking or on-the-ground type harassment. Other people, however, they actually experience full-blown electronic harassment. It seems like it depends on different situations. So my first occurrence with that was in 2010, and the reason why that pertains to what happened in 2014 to me is that, so here, fast forward, I'm in this other company. The company has a merger, and I'm sent to train one of the companies that's been recently acquired. So I'm going through a week's training, speaking to the representative of this other company. And during that time, between the break periods, the v2K started, which sounded like it was in the room. But the conversation of it, dealing with my military background, how I'm mentally unstable and so forth, all of that, was the exact same conversation that was taking place in that gaslighting incident I had experienced back in the end of 2009, 2010. So it was like this script, after all those years, resurfaced with this new organization that was recently acquired by this other IT firm. And what's interesting is that both these companies were British. The company that was doing the acquiring was an American company that was based in England. And in that company, I hadn't experienced electronic harassment. So, yeah, that's what happened. When that happened to me, and I realized that the company was being structured, and in that department I was in, people were being asked to basically move to other departments or be made redundant. At the same time, at the new place I had moved to, I started experiencing insomnia, electronic pulses, which is called electroshock, where I couldn't sleep at night. I think the area I was in, I was being hit heavy with electromagnetic radiation. It was very painful. Parts of my body where I was getting shocks, like around my heart muscle, around the back of my neck, so I couldn't sleep. This was in
Oxfordshire?
This was in Oxfordshire.
Because you were living in Oxfordshire at this time.
Yeah, so this was the place I had moved to from Cirencester, where I experienced the initial electronic harassment. I felt ill constantly, as if I was I felt almost like a lethargic. So normally, if you're exercising and you're doing all these things, you recover and you feel better. The next day, you feel refreshed. I wasn't feeling that. I was actually feeling weaker and more ill. And I tried everything. I mean, I tried changing my diet. I tried lightening up on the amount of working out. It was almost as if the more I worked out, the sicker I was getting, the more lethargic I was getting, on top of the electronic harassment. And I think electronic harassment wears down the body's immune system. And over time, I really felt like my life was in danger. And when I took the sum total, this was when I contacted you. I contacted family members at home. And we started praying. Got deep in prayer.
Well, let me add a little bit to this part of the story for people who are listening. So Tivon and I are dating. We're partners, and we had just started dating around this time. We met at a build for a free energy device that my family was working on, which is a very highly sensitive topic. So I feel that I was targeted as well because of the work that I was involved in. Tivon is an engineer, so he was interested in the device, and he came to a live build in the UK, and that's where we met in person. But we had known about each other online before that, and we had started dating shortly after that, and he came to visit me in Morocco because I had just moved to Morocco, and I said, why don't you come out and spend, you know, a little vacation in Morocco? And at the time, I had no idea that he was experiencing these things. So he came to visit me. We had a house on the beach, and he was, you know, getting some nice sunshine and fresh sea water, and, you know, just to have a little bit of a vacation or holiday, because it was around October.
Yeah.
So it was rainy and gloomy in England at that time. So he was like, yeah, sure. So he came out, we spent some time together, and then he went back to England. And we had started dating at that point, like I said, so we were going to do a long-distance relationship until we can figure out some way to be together. That was the plan in the beginning.
Yeah.
But because of this electronic harassment and gang stalking that Tivon was going through, he literally packed up his whole life in 4 days.
Yes, 4 days.
And left very quickly. So this is what happened from my perspective, right? I was trying to talk to him, and we would do Skype calls, and I sensed that there was something panicked in his voice, and I was trying to ask him, you know, what's going on? Are you okay? And he basically was just like, I don't know if I can really talk about it, because he felt like that the line was tapped and that he was being monitored. And we did find out later that that was indeed true, because we actually saw the actual hijacking of his Skype account, because somebody had hijacked his Skype account, and it was working on its own when he had closed down the account. It was really strange. So we found out later that that was true, and I said, can you give me any kind of a clue? And I said, and I'll go look it up.
Yeah.
And I think this is an important part of the story for a lot of targeted individuals, because most people that are going through this feel like they're crazy, and they try telling people close to them, and they're told by the people that they love, oh, well, maybe you're crazy, you need to go see a shrink, go get on some kind of medication, I don't know what's wrong with you, you're schizophrenic, like, you know, they're just, I don't believe you, is the basic scenario that a lot of victims get. Nobody believes them. But I'm not that kind of person. You know, I'm a little out of the box, I guess, right? So I said, I want to know what it is, tell me what it is, and I'll do my homework and I'll go look it up, so that he didn't have to feel like he had to explain it to me on a tapped line, right? So he said, just look up the words gangstalking and v2K. And I said, okay. So we hung up, and I went and I looked it up, and I found all kinds of stuff to get an understanding as to what was going on. And I started to understand what he might be going through. And then he told me that his training at his job, something happened. He went to the office, like he was just describing. He went to this new training for his job, and all of a sudden they pulled out that script, and he realized that it was happening again. And something in him just switched, and he said, I know we had plans that I was going to live here, and I was going to save up money, and we were going to figure this out long term, but all of it changed, and he said, I have to get out of here right away. And I said, well, come to Morocco. You get here, just get here, and we'll figure this out. We'll figure this out together. And within 4 days, he packed up everything in his house, which was small. He had a storage unit. He had to get all of his stuff sold off or given away or emptied out of the storage unit.
Give it away.
Right? Give it away. Gave it all away. You had to put in your time from your job and say, I quit. You had to give back the computer for the job. You had to do all of that, and then book a plane ticket with whatever savings you had left. To book a plane ticket to get on the first flight that you could to Morocco.
That's right.
And the last night before he left his apartment, what we actually went through is he was afraid for his life, and he thought that they were going to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm petrified that that was going to happen. So what I did was I said, I tell you what, let's stay on a Skype call together, and every half hour while you're packing your bags, check in with me. And I stayed up with him all night long.
Yeah.
Checking in with him every half hour to make sure that he was still there, that he was still okay, and helping, like saying, don't forget to pack your socks, you know, like helping him with the logistics of packing his stuff.
Yeah.
So that he can get on a plane. So that is the beginning of his healing, I would say. Because
Yeah.
as soon as you landed in Morocco, you left the grid
Yes.
of the gangstalking
Yeah.
and the electronic harassment.
So,
So from here, I want to go forward and just ask you about your journey to healing.
mm-hmm.
We'll start with the grid concept. Can you explain the grids of this technology?
Based on the testimony of other people who are targeted individuals, including those who are ex-intelligence, the grid system is a decentralized platform that includes a satellite-based weapons system. And it's primarily a maser, similar to ground penetrating type technology. So depending on what level you are in the program or what list you're on, you can be harassed anywhere in the world. That's the whole purpose of it. So if you are in any of the more Western countries where this apparently has been implemented and is to a certain refined state, you can be, a lot of directed energy can be focused in one spot, and you can experience all kinds of electromagnetic torture. So you have this 21st century based technology, but then when it comes to trying to find any kind of legal avenue to combating this, everything seems to be based in the 19th century. So it's like the medical profession doesn't talk about this. Psychologists will dismiss this. This is all of a sudden microwave energy doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many patents you pull,
And show.
how many military documents claim this technology is not only exists but is in use. How many testimonies there are of people, which seem to be rising exponentially on the internet, especially from 2014 when I looked. There's hardly anything on YouTube, but now all kinds of people claim to be targeted individuals. So I think there's a COINTEL aspect that's currently underway here. The point is there's a lot of people who claim that this is happening to, and all of this is dismissed. So I think this is going to come to a head. But needless to say, if it's not Western countries that are using this platform, from, again, like what Karen Stewart would say, it also looks like certain developing countries, like total dictatorships, also have this technology. Now, how is that possible? If it's not Western countries that people are claiming to be basically being held hostage at this virtual fascist system, you have people in total dictatorships or countries like even like in India, the Philippines, or certain parts of Africa, where people claim to be victims of v2K, where otherwise they don't have, there's a lot of modern infrastructure they don't have, but they have that. So this system has been given and is decentralized, and it seems to be given to a criminal underclass. But what I will say for my own personal healing, a lot of the human gang-stalking aspect is gone. You know, they have to do other things to try that kind of thing here.
And that's because you like the community watch stuff, right?
Yes.
So it's not like people outside your house doing weird things because you're in a foreign country.
That's right.
English is not the main language here.
Yeah.
There are tourists here, and there have been a couple of incidences where you looked and said, "Who's that person and what are they doing?"
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's a completely different climate. So the only way that they can get to you is via like satellite.
Electronic means.
Electronic means. And so before we go into that, I want to just expound a little bit about your background and knowledge when it comes to technology. And I think this is probably what makes you they picked the wrong guy, right? Because if this happens to other people who don't understand the way basic technology works, or the way frequencies work, radio waves and all of that, then this would be really hard for someone to figure out. And the goals of this program is to make someone get on drugs or commit suicide.
Yes.
It's basically a really horrific population control program.
Yes.
So when it comes to somebody like you, so you've got your training, as we said earlier, in the Navy as a technician, but you've spent 16 years at least of your life as an engineer, doing clean energy research. So this involves things around Nikola Tesla's technology, radio waves, transmissions, frequencies, sound, vibration, radiant energy, electricity, all these different types of technology. And you actually build devices and do experiments for using technology. You know, experiments where you're building machines that generate energy and electricity. You build contraptions and machines that send small pulses through the body in order to heal the body from bacterias and things like that. And you've gotten into Orgonite as well, because you understand the technology and the science about how these things work. So for somebody like you who is being targeted by electronic weapons, you have a different take on it because you understand the effect of these weapons because you've been trained in some of this stuff. So taking it from there, let's talk about some of your experimenting. Okay, on your road to healing. Because the first thing you had to do was get rid of the physical environment. Which was to get out of the grid of the UK and move to a foreign country where the grid was less dense. Right? We'll just call it that because it pretty much got rid of that aspect. So it was a little bit better. And there was a bit of a break from the signals. So it was like it took them a while to find you again because it was just like a GPS. Think about a GPS and like you bleep off the map. For about a month, and then it takes them a while to find your signal again. And so then they found you again, and then they started using the v2K and the signals again because we were living at that time in a very highly populated city area with lots and lots and lots of cell phone towers that could easily be used as transmitters to pick up these waves from the UK.
That's right,
Because you said that you were hearing voices from the voice-to-skull technology while you were in Morocco, and this is actually, I hate to say it, but this is actually a little funny because, and at this point Tivon and I are together, and he would tell me about this, and because I believe him and I've been on this journey with him, I would say, well, what are they saying now? So they had British accents, did they not?
Same operators,
Same operators, so they had the same accents, so you knew that it was coming from the same base in the UK.
Or some group somewhere,
Some group somewhere with a British accent beaming over to you. And they were saying, what were the things they were saying now?
Well, a lot of it is scripted, but frustration, just general.
They were frustrated.
Just frustration.
They were frustrated at you.
Having to leave the country. What's important is that, especially if you are a v2K victim or someone who's being electronically targeted, you want to remove yourself from a place that is dense in electromagnetic radiation. I mean, if they're hitting you heavy, there's certain parts of the world that are inundated with radiation coming from cell towers, Gwyn towers, any kind of powerful transmitter. But to be honest, I mean, you can be at one of the most remote spots on the planet and still be hit with the signal. And I believe what's happening is there's a decentralized network that is flooding the whole planet with these frequencies. And your frequency is but a set of a larger set of frequencies that's flooding the planet. And your body is like a radio receiver. Now the way radios work, like the old crystal radios, is a signal comes out from a transmitter, a radio station tower. It doesn't need to know where the receiver is located. The receiver just needs to be able to receive the signal. So the point is, your body is like that. If you're anywhere where the signal is being transmitted, you're going to receive the signal. So in that respect, they don't necessarily, the operators of this technology, don't need to know exactly where you are. If they know you are in a general area, they just need to flood the whole space with these frequencies, with the guarantee that you will receive it, because all our bodies are different, and they have your set of frequencies, and when you're hit with it, they know that you're going to receive the signal. Now, from that point forward, the technology is a lot like the way radar works. Basically, your body's turned into a dirty circuit, and they're relying on that to be able to do what they do to you. But yeah, general frustration is if you leave an area that is their control grid and you go somewhere else, they have to increase the power levels. That they have to. There's other systems of that they have to put in place to change the program so that they can continue to harass you. Because once you're on this network, the whole point is to destroy you and to murder you, to kill you.
Right. So when you left, you basically tripled their budget requirements to pursue you.
Anyone who's in this program, you need to make it as expensive as possible for these people.
Right.
Which, again, it's convenient to have a QE to infinity situation if you could just print money. I think there's an aspect of this that plays into the depopulation agenda that probably needs to be looked at by other academic researchers. But I think that this program is so expensive. The budget for this has to be huge, enormous, and that it requires both government and private billion-dollar foundations, companies, agencies to implement. It has to be massive, but it is decentralized, which is why when people are asked who you think is responsible for this, you're looking at every intelligence agency that is tied to a multi-billion-dollar military complex, which includes military contractors, government officials, and on the ground, you're talking about people from the judges on down who are told to look the other way and to take payment for it. So what you're looking at is a grassroots fascist system.
Oh, wow.
That's taking over several countries at the same time. And if you want to talk about something that is ubiquitous, that tracks everybody, that's how you have a complete tracking system. It's not going to be a bunch of police officers barging into your house and putting a barcode on the back of your neck. It's going to be something that's already on you or in you that you don't know about, and you're already uplinked to a network and you don't know. And so that's how you're tracked. So you can have a big brother system in place. The thing is that who wants to go through the final rollout of making it legal? And I think that's where this system is at right now. It's just trying to remove people who have been deemed undesirable and trying to do it in a way so that all the legs of the legal justice system is removed.
You know, it's funny because, well, not funny, actually. I had a dear friend who had a respect for their privacy. I won't mention who they were, but I had a dear friend who actually recently passed away. And she passed away under very suspicious circumstances. She was very healthy, and all of a sudden she just suddenly got cancer and died within like a few weeks. And the last time I spoke to her, because she was interested in our little company that we've put together called Fix the World, and she said to me, if you really want to fix the world, make them turn off the machines. And I didn't know what she meant by that at the time, but she was highly versed in what we're talking about now, because I didn't understand what machines, you know, all the, like, you mean like the industrial machines? No, the gangstalking, electronic harassment, frequency emitting machines, and there are testimonies of people just suddenly getting cancer because they can actually generate a frequency and beam it into your body and give you cancer. And there's a huge testimony by Barry Trower.
Barry Trower, yes.
Who is an ex-Royal Navy MI5 agent.
Yes.
Who is an expert on microwave technology, who talks all about.
Everybody needs to hear that testimony.
Yeah, you need to hear that testimony. So we'll put that link below as well. Let's just move forward again with your healing journey.
Okay,
And the reason, the way I want to break this out, have you break this out, is that the battle that you had to fight and are still fighting against this kind of weaponry and harassment and, you know, being a target, it's both physical and spiritual.
Yes.
So first, let's cover all the physical things, the scientific things, and then after that, we'll touch upon the spiritual elements of this battle, because at its root, it is demonic.
Yes.
And it comes from the satanic, Luciferian worshiping elite.
Yes.
And we know this.
Yes.
But first, let's go through physical things. So you just described how you got out of the grid.
Yes.
So that physically removed you from the grid and made it more difficult. So that got rid of some of the targeting, but you still had voices, and they were frustrated. You could hear the frustration in their voices. But so now the next thing is that you can't change any more external factors, because you already moved out of a country. So now what you have to do is you can just try to focus on your body and changing things in your body and in your house to try to create defensive shields against these radio waves that are coming through.
Yeah.
So you went through a series of things and have been experimenting for at least 2 years. You've got a lot of success with certain things. Where would you like to start with these different
I think I'll first start with the Orgonite.
Okay.
And as a technician, when I first heard about Orgonite, I was skeptical. I dismissed it. It wasn't until we were in Morocco in the first place, that was surrounded by cell phone towers, and I was very sensitive to the electromagnetic environment there. I was given a piece of Orgonite material, which is basically aluminum, in this case, aluminum particles and epoxy resin, which has not only shielding properties, but also is able to change the nature of the electromagnetic fields that are hitting an area. We're talking about in a room. So this was given to me by a friend, and I had problems sleeping in a particular room at the time. Within the first evening of having that in my room, I was able to sleep peacefully. And now I was very skeptical, because I'm like, well, how is this piece of hunk of material going to help my situation?
Right.
But it did, and I continued to sleep with it, and I was able to continually get sleep better over time. And it got me interested in researching this technology, learned about what orgone energy was, as defined by Dr. Wilhelm Reich, who's long deceased, and that was called today as a scalar energy-based technology.
Can you kind of paraphrase what it is?
Basically, it's any kind of technology that is able to take random fields that are in the environment that inherently is harmful to the body and reorganize these fields into something that is more compatible with all life forms. Now, the scalar technology tends to have certain properties like emit negative ions. It's just what it does. That's one of the properties. So
these Orgonite devices.
Yeah.
They when you take the components, like what are the components of an Orgonite device? It's different metals.
It's
right?
different metals. When Reich was creating these structures, they tend to be steel or something with some kind of magnetic property to them.
And then some quartz also.
Steel. It could be steel, quartz, also a organic compound with carbon in it. So if it's not sheets of plastic, resin. In the current embodiment, it's metal flakes and resin. And these metal flakes can be all kinds of metals, including steel, aluminum, brass.
Right.
With quartz powder.
And so when you put these all together and then you put them in a resin, the act of that resin hardening, what that does is it creates this compacted energy around those particular materials. And when that happens, especially in the quartz, it creates a piezoelectric or piezoelectric effect within the quartz, which then, with all those materials, emits negative ions.
Right.
Is one thing that it does, which are really good for you, and they help to change the energy in the environment to make it more healthy for human beings and health.
That's right. And this technology is measurable. It's been replicated many times. It's independent of what anyone believes. It just works. But what's happened is, you have other people in like the New Age community and so forth sees this kind of thing. Though it's been defined, like 50, 60 years in advance, and put, a bit of mystique around it. But the point is, this is real solid technology that can be used to, what it does is restructure the fields in an environment so that if they are affecting you negatively, they don't affect you in that way.
Actually, we just heard recently from a friend that a compound such as Orgonite is being used in some naval equipment. So the military recognizes the scientific importance of materials like this.
Yes.
And what you've done over the last couple of years is perfect your own formula of making Orgonite, quartz, shungite, brass, iron oxide, and steel, all encased in an epoxy resin. And you created molds to make them in pretty designs. You have a Flower of Life design right now. And you created pendants that people can wear, and plates, small plates that you can use for different things. And what you've been finding is that when you put water around Orgonite, like you put a glass of water on top of the Orgonite, the Orgonite changes the pH of the water and makes it more alkaline. You have found that, for your physical symptoms, it helps. You sleep with Orgonite around you, and it helps to...
At the time, the biggest problem I was having was this insomnia and very terrible nightmares. This weapon system, the thing about this electronic harassment system is very far advanced to the point of planting dark nightmares. And there are some other people that you're going to start hearing more of this, of people talking about nightmares being planted that aren't from their mind or from their conscious, and they're simply planted. So if you're not suffering from the extreme nightmares, you're kept awake through the electronic targeting. What Orgonite does is it allows you to sleep. It allows you to sleep. So, it's very easy to construct. If you just YouTube Orgonite and look at the old videos that are up there and make your own, it's simply get a 2-part epoxy resin, which is available almost everywhere. Have access to some metal filings, very cheap to acquire, and make your own. Follow the instructions and just replicate the work. Start there, especially if you're targeted. There really is no excuse. You need to get your hands on this stuff and feel the difference. So that's where I started from, and because of those results, I started to improve on the design and have my own special blend I use. But the point is, I use powders, and I'm just amazed with the results, and I'm making it, sharing it. So making the Orgonite allows me to sleep, and I've been researching this for the past 2 years. And now I've moved on to not only using it to shield the home, but also combining it with other things for even better ways of blocking EMF, specifically microwave radiation.
And you actually, when you said sharing it, you started sharing it with family and friends, and then there was such a demand for it because your designs are really sleek and beautiful. So you actually started selling it through a business venture called Vibration. So we'll put a link to that, of course, below, so that if people want to get their hands on some of this Orgonite as well from Tivon, it's really great stuff. But not just your physical body, it actually has been changing the environment in the house. And just as a side note, it changes the atmosphere in the clouds.
Yes, it does.
Above the house. So can you just give a little bit of a testimony about all this Orgonite we've got on our roof? And you can actually see that it clears up things like chemtrails around the house.
So there are some experiments to try once you start making this compound. We call it Orgonite, but it's a composite you're making. And this composite is able to restructure fields in the environment. So if the environment's being flooded by electromagnetic radiation, and then you have a region of orgonite that you've created that restructures it, what you're changing, in essence, is you're creating a localized field of energy that is that has a noticeable impact on the environment. How do you measure that? One of the tests you can do is something called the ice test. One of the things I make is called a charge plate. It's basically a plate made of this orgonite resin. And I take a glass of water, distilled water in my particular test, and I put it in the freezer. And you literally have this glass of water sitting on the plate, and you have it in the freezer, and you wait for the water to freeze in this glass. When you take out this frozen glass of ice water, what you'll see is a tornado pattern form inside. It's really amazing. Mm-hmm. Inside the ice, with some looks like bubble patterns converging towards the middle.
So it actually creates a visual representation of
Yes.
what the field looks like coming from the orgonite.
Yes, this is a slowly spiraling field with a lot of power behind it to change the molecular bonds of anything in that area. In this case, it's the hydrogen bonds within water as it freezes. But what happens is it does the same thing in the atmosphere. So, we have pyramids of this orgonite, and we have it sitting on our flat roof. And this is based on research there's this Russian scientist that I think it's in the 90s, where he created a giant plastic pyramid, a pure plastic, several stories tall. The University of Moscow gave him the grant to do this. And what they did is when they built that, they noticed that there was a huge ion column coming from the tip of the pyramid straight up into the atmosphere. It's like a soft ion column that's just formed just from making the pyramid. So
Wow.
the shape has something to do in that situation with what they were seeing. They also saw rare plants that were considered extinct in the environment start sprouting
Wow.
around the pyramid. So we're talking about a level of science that isn't easily discussed, but the same thing is with this orgonite. We have these little resin orgonite pyramids on our flat roof, and what we noticed is that when we put them there, we had this gray sky with some chemtrail activity open up into this blue open patch around
Above our
us
house.
when we started making these pyramids. Yeah. And I've been making them ever since, and sharing them with people, selling them to other people, and it's amazing. It really is an amazing technology. It also has electromagnetic shielding properties. So anyone who's targeted needs to start getting involved and learn what this technology is all about. You're going to feel the difference, especially if you've been targeted for a while.
Beautiful. Let's also go into some more of the physical aspects. We found tracking patents
Yes.
for root canals.
Yes.
Okay, so we found a series of patents that have been registered on Google Patents where they are putting tracking devices inside of people's root canals without even telling them.
Yes, that's it.
So you had one
Yeah.
in your mouth from a dentist in the UK,
Yes.
and we actually had a device that was able to,
RF detector.
it was an RF detector, and when you put it close to your mouth, it started going off. The device started registering a signal coming out of your tooth.
Yeah.
So you went to the dentist and said, I want you to pull this tooth. And
Yes.
what did she say? She thought you were crazy.
Well, she asked me why.
This was in Morocco,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. She asked me why did I want to remove the root canal.
It's perfectly
And
fine.
it's perfectly fine. I said, oh, just remove it.
Get it out. As soon as you did that,
Yeah, that felt better.
the signal decreased
yeah, it did.
significantly.
Yeah.
So the other things that you've been finding is this concept that your whole body is being turned into an antenna
Yes.
through the means of metal toxicity. By putting heavy metals in the environment, they're
Yes.
turning everybody into antennas.
Yes.
The heavy metals that are being sprayed in the chemtrails.
Yes, that's it.
We found smart dust, which are little teeny weeny microchips that are the size of a fleck of dust.
Yes.
There's things like biofilm.
That's right.
All kinds of pollutants that are in the environment that are being sprayed on populations without their consent, obviously, and without their knowledge. And so we are breathing this, we're eating it, we're drinking it, and our bodies are being turned into toxic, heavy metal-laden antennas, so that we can receive signals sent to us through these covert weapons.
Yeah, I guess before I talk more about that, when you read about the history of the voice-to-skull technology, at least the way it's been documented as far as where it came from, it all started from World War II, when the radar and radio operators, when they were fixing the radomes, the actual transmitters, and they were in the vicinity of these transmitters, the clicks, the microwaves that were within the vicinity of the radio operator, the technician who was fixing it, they were hearing clicks in their head. And they're complaining, say, when I go up and work on this thing, I'm getting clicks in my head. And so then research, that's when the research started.
So talk a little bit about this heavy metal detox concept, because if you got all these heavy metals in your body, you want to, so you've been detoxing your body from heavy metals. What are some of the things that you've been doing for that?
Okay, so the reason why I had to go into a background about the v2K being clicks that were detectable by people in World War II is because if you think of the diet or what's going on in the environment then compared to now, you can make an argument that people weren't suffering from so much heavy metal toxicity. So there is a level of, no matter what, if this kind of radiation is being beamed at someone, even if they're healthy, they probably will detect a signal if they're on the network. But however, what happens when you throw in the smart dust, when you throw in, if you might have had an actual physical implant in you, or if you just if you're just toxic with heavy metals, especially aluminum, barium, and these heavy metals, you are more trackable. So instead of you being like a small dot on someone's radar screen, you're like a giant blip.
Well, aluminum and barium and strontium also, right?
And strontium, yeah, especially radioactive particles.
Those are found in chemtrails.
Found in chemtrails and also in the environment, but the chemtrails seem to really speed it up. And the whole point is to have almost like dozens of ways, hundreds of ways of being trackable. That's all in your body. But the things are that you want to detox yourself from these things. So a heavy metal detox is the start. Detox yourself from all these heavy metals. So you have to look up how to detox barium, how to detox aluminum, strontium, all these heavy metals from your body. And you want to make your body as clean as possible. What that does is that reduces your footprint, your trackable footprint. And what it also does is it alleviate a lot of the symptoms that people are suffering from. A lot of these conditions that can be induced in the body from this radiation is because these metal particles are in your nervous system or on your skin or internally in your body, along with the other things. And is that these are points where the radiation can latch onto to induce inflammations, to induce triggering things like the heart muscle and these other things. So you want to remove these things from your body. And so that's what's important here. A detox regime, and to do it as a lifelong thing. It's not something you just get rid of after a couple months, you'll be okay. You have to look at this as this is your new lifestyle now. Yeah. To clean your body constantly, because we're being sprayed constantly.
And also the other stuff that's going on, like the food.
Exactly.
The GMO food, the fluoride in the water, all of these, major problems that many people are becoming more and more aware of. And, if you're listening to this and you're not a targeted individual and you don't feel like you've been targeted, these are really good practices anyway. The Orgonite is really good to have around your house just to clean the environment around your house, just so that you and your family are healthier and happier and sleep better.
And also, it's understandable, a lot of people listening to this program are probably going to think, well, this is just a bit too much. I don't really agree to any of this. I don't think it's real. But what's really important is that just have this in the back of your head, in the back of your mind, so that if you or a loved one or your cousin or nephew experiences these things, you have this information to fall back on. because this is affecting a lot of people now. Whole communities of people are coming together complaining of this problem, because this testing is not just done on an individual level. Some of these platforms are just, they're sending out signals to see if the entire community will react.
Oh, yeah.
You got areas where people are dying of like cancer clusters, and the people are at the community are complaining that it's the cell tower. You got all kinds of stuff happening around the world right now that are looking to these technologies as being the root cause.
Also, Barry Trower, the XMI5 agent,
Yeah.
microwave expert, he was talking about how they can send out a signal to a community of people. For example, there's one frequency that will make men become, like, increase the testosterone and become more violent.
It's sexually aggressive.
And sexually aggressive. So if there's like an increase in rape in an area,
Yes.
it might have been caused by a signal.
Yes.
And vice versa. I mean, they can target aspects of the body, you
Yes.
know, and if you get targeted with one of these frequencies that creates sexual arousal, it exists. You know, Barry Trower was actually talking about how that exists, and that is a real problem, because I've seen this in communities of people that are meeting together at, let's say, conferences, or they're doing, like, you know, tours on the road, and all of a sudden there's this increase in sexual desire and promiscuous behavior that might not necessarily be natural or normal in any way. Maybe there's an outside influence that is coming in and trying to influence people as sort of a social experiment.
Yes.
To see what would happen if we threw a whole bunch of people together in a conference and then energized it with some kind of energy to make people react in a certain way.
Yes. Well, I'll just briefly touch on it, but that does bring into social aspects of what this technology is capable of if people in certain areas of the economy aren't aware of it. For example, betting, spread betting. If someone's betting on the horse or an Olympic race, and you have such technology and you target a prized athlete that will probably win the 100-meter, you can have that athlete during mid-run pull a muscle. They lose the race, and the bets go to someone else. This is the type of thing you can do with such technology. This is why this is going to completely restructure society to those who are aware of it, and will have to, I don't know, hedge their bets, maybe change their infrastructure, change their businesses. A lot of things are going to change to people who are aware and want to know about this technology, because it's going to it's in fact affecting businesses.
Well, I was just going to say, if you're talking about influencing betting as an example, what about influencing things like the stock market?
Yes, well,
and different industries. For example, I know that they have things for the weather, right? If a crop does well, or if a crop fails, people make tons of money off of insurance on crops failing.
Yes.
So, you know, controlling the weather is one reason why they're doing that, is to influence the stock market and to manipulate the money system.
Yes.
And economies that way. So, of course, they're probably using this technology to help rig the markets as well.
So I suspect this technology has been used so much that other agencies and governments and businesses around the world are aware of it. And they probably have their own version of the technology. And you probably have groups having countermeasures against the technology to the best of their ability. But, you know, it really is hard to block scalar type radiation. But you can change the form of it. You can reorganize it. It's just, we're talking about a whole new market, a whole new science. It's just not taught. And the general population at the moment is held victim to it. To those who are willing to look at the information, you know, at least they're going to have something as a hedge of protection by programs like ours on what to do to, you know, to at least survive it.
Yeah. Now, let's, and by the way, we've written a book that puts a lot of this information in there, because you were saying before that maybe people would dismiss it, but we've done our best to put this information together in a book so that we can show the proof. We show things like blood tests that prove that the Orgonite works a certain way on human health. We show all the patents for the technology, testimonies from people in the field. I mean, as much proof and evidence as we could have come together with in the last couple of years. And we put it all in this book for people. And we'll put a link to that book down at the bottom as well. It's called Forbidden Tech. And there's all of this is in that book also. Let's round out this testimony and interview with the spiritual battle. Okay. Because we're talking about all the physical stuff, right? But a human being is not just a body. No. We have a mind and a heart and a spirit and a soul and emotions that come from that. So there's two sides to fighting against this if you are a targeted individual. And probably the first thing you've got to do is the spiritual battle. Because if you can do that first, it allows you to follow up with the physical things. So talk about how you handled this spiritually.
My spiritual journey, because I think beforehand, I mean, I was living in a lifestyle where I was distant from Christ. I am a follower of the way. I did consider myself to be a Christian, but fallen away from my faith, especially during the separation. A really tough time for me. But when I became targeted, and especially when I was leaving that situation out of the UK, I got deep into prayer, and from that point forward started my new journey and becoming closer to my faith, which is in Jesus Christ. And I had to pray regularly. There's an aspect of this technology that people need to be aware of, and it isn't like to be discussed among people in the community who were trying to give their testimony, but I think it's very important to mention to people who are listening to this, is that there is a spiritual aspect to this. And the people on the other side of this platform are not just psychopathic. They really do believe they're gods. They really do they have a real hatred of humanity. They have a religion. It is a religion. The people on the other side. And it's not, don't just assume it's any kind of atheism. They really do have the closest to we describe would be a satanic, a Luciferian type religion aspect to this. And it's not the first time that this has been picked up on. Others who were trying to disclose the remote viewing program described that as part of the training, the military have to go through what would be described as black magic, manuals on black magic, as a way of attacking the target. So it's kind of taken in this distilled form, but it is, there is a aspect that deals with what would be defined as spiritual warfare. And the reason why this is very important is that if you're not grounded in a faith, a solid belief system, you'll be picked apart by this program, because this program attacks all levels of the human being, all levels. It's not just a mental, it's not just a physical, it's not just your daily life when a neighbor is trying to harass you. It is the spiritual aspect of you. So you need to have a solid spiritual foundation. For me, it's the strongest part. Without that, I wouldn't be here. I simply would not be here.
Because they want your soul.
Yes, that's the general, pardon me, that's the general theme of it. They want your soul. They want to take away, peel apart the human being, and you become intimate. You have a more intimate flavor of your mortality being in this program. That I choose not to live a life of torture as a tortured victim, but through my faith, through my strong faith, that I'm victorious. And I'm going to spread this information, and I'm going to see this program brought to an end.
Amen.
Because we can't call ourselves human beings and claim to want to be in a free society and give our loved ones. Some of us don't have children, but we have nieces and nephews and other younger people in our family line that we want to have at least a at least as much freedoms as we enjoyed when we were children. I think we really need to start thinking about the next generation after us and what kind of legacy we're going to leave for them. If that's the case, then we're all going to have to fight. We're the generation that's going to have to fight this crap that the other generation failed to fight. And my faith has brought me to this point. And this needs to get out to as many people as possible. We need to have solutions for people when they get into this network. They have more solutions waiting for them than what I had, than what people who've been on this program 20 years have had to deal with. That's how we beat this thing. So yeah, for me, the spiritual aspect, the constant prayer for me, with you and me, the prayer sessions has solidified my resolve in Jesus Christ. And the ability to actually do battle in the spiritual realm has made me stronger than I ever thought I could ever be. Definitely more than not having that aspect in my life. So for that, actually, I'm actually kind of thankful that I've had that revelation.
Well, it's interesting because we don't consider ourselves to be religious people.
Yeah.
But in our faith, through Christ, there is teachings about how to fight spiritually against the powers of darkness and the principalities of darkness. So together we've been fighting this battle on a spiritual level through prayer.
Yes.
And through revelation and just being as close to our Creator as we can. So that, and it's interesting too because there definitely are layers to this kind of warfare, and it's like everything is physical on the bottom, and then you've got the technology layered on top of that, but the people that are controlling the technology, but above all of that are the powers and principalities that are controlling the people that are controlling the technology.
That's right.
So that is where we're choosing to fight this battle through prayer and learning how to pray as well.
Absolutely.
And speaking certain spiritual warfare words out, so that we can try to command a presence around us and our home and our family to combat this, and it's working.
That's all I have to say. It works.
It works.
It works. I tried many other things, and of course we can talk about shielding and all this different stuff. All I gotta say is having a solid foundation in your spiritual grounding works.
Mm-hmm. So with that, is there anything you'd like to say to close out your testimony to other victims out there?
I guess I just want to say that there are many of us who are in there right with you, and that we're all looking for solutions and sharing them the best to our ability, and that we're not victims, but I think there's a higher calling for what's happening. I do think there is bigger plans slated for this platform. However, I think by us talking about this, giving our testimony to the public and sharing some solutions is really disrupting their program in a lot of ways, because in whole, the human experience, the condition is a nonlinear system. And if you think trying to control nonlinear systems is nearly impossible. To any mathematician, they would say that's impossible. But that's what these people are trying to do. So we're in for some interesting times. However, I do think that in the end, this will be revealed, and these people actually have to come out and from the shadows, and that's where the victory will be.
Well, thank you so much for that, and thanks everybody for listening to this testimony and interview, and we hope that it was helpful. And we will be covering this topic more and more in our upcoming shows through Real Speaks, and through the blog, and to try to just spread awareness around this problem and connect with as many people as we can to help others.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody.